Well, good afternoon or good evening, and welcome to Step Up the Podcast. I'm Mike Peacock, your host, along with my partner in crime, I guess, the good doctor, Marty Durden. And this is, again, Step Up, Make a Difference, the podcast. And we are here. And Marty, it is already August. Unbelievable.
I'm telling you, they're about to tee it up all over America and kick off that ball. This is my favorite time of year. How about you?
Absolutely. You know, we've got a lot going on here with our Georgia Alabama Sports Live organization, about to get going on all these ball games. Matter of fact, I think we have the first ball game of the season, because in Georgia, girls softball begins at the beginning of the school year, and the first game is Monday, tomorrow. Actually, when people see this podcast, first game of the season is tomorrow, and from there we will be rolling. And before you know it, it'll be high school football season, and right behind that will be college football season. And you know, next thing you know, it'll be December, and we'll be singing Christmas carols. But it is crazy. And I'm going to tell you, it is hot here in the state of Georgia. You know that, Marty, but it's hot in a lot of the country right now. It is really hot. But we've got a tremendous guest today, and Marty, you worked hard to secure this appearance. But we've got Dan Britton, who is formerly the head of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and now he is a part of a ministry that is called Sports Life Leadership. And we are just proud to have Dan Britton join us today. And we're really looking forward to this episode of Step Up. So let's bring Dan on in. Dan, welcome to Step Up the Podcast. We are honored to have you with us today.
It's great to be here. It's a privilege, Mike and Marty, to join you. And thank you for having me.
We're burning up over here in Georgia. It's like 100 degrees outside. Now, are you in Kansas City tonight? Or
it's smoking here too. Got in my car, and my car said 106. So I'm not sure if that was right or not, but it felt like 106.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Well, I watched the Braves and Royals last night, and everybody looked like they were about to melt out there at Kauffman Stadium. So I know it's hot in Kansas City as well, but we've been having some really hot temperatures, as we normally do this time of year here in Georgia. But I was kind of looking out my window here to see if any of the trees had burst into flames yet, but they haven't. It is really hot. It's kind of oppressive when you get out of the car, and before you can get in a building a few feet away, you're already broken into a sweat. But that's just normal living for us here in the Southeast. And I know you get some of that in Kansas City, the beginning of the Midwest there, I guess. So, we are, and just wanted to just kind of introduce ourselves to you, Dan. We have started this podcast. Marty, as you probably know, has written some books, and he's written a curriculum on servant leadership for coaches and athletes. And we decided to start this podcast basically centered on that. And we've most of our guests have been either coaches, administrators, or athletes, or somebody involved in that realm. You fit that bill to a T, because you've been a part of one of the greatest organizations ever to be created in Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And now you are involved in another organization that is tremendous. We're going to talk a little bit more about it as we go, and let you tell folks about what you've got going on now. But tell us about yourself a little bit, just a little, maybe a nugget of background on you and your information, and how you got into the world of Fellowship of Christian Athletes and then in sports life leadership.
Well, it started for me back in 1985 when I first got introduced to FCA. I was a freshman at University of Delaware. I was a lacrosse player, which isn't as big in the South, but as big on the East Coast. I grew up in the DC, Virginia area. My dad was an All-American lacrosse player at the Naval Academy. Played against the greatest lacrosse player ever, Jim Brown. They say Jim Brown was a great football player, but at Syracuse, he was a dominant lacrosse player. And so I had two older brothers, and we grew up with a lacrosse stick in the crib. Didn't have any choice, but played football, basketball, lacrosse. But my passion was lacrosse. And so I had a chance to get recruited to play Division I lacrosse. Grew up my entire life going up, seeing Hopkins and Maryland play, and dreaming one day that I'd be on those fields. And little did I know, in 1985, when I started in high school and heard about FCA, but didn't have a chapter in my high school, but ended up going to University of Delaware there as a freshman, and made the lacrosse team, and was a contributor. Started 3 years there, was captain of the team my senior year in '89. But when I got to Delaware, Marty, and Mike, I just realized that this small little FCA group that was meeting on Thursday nights with 8 football players, 1 swimmer, 1 lacrosse player. I was a lacrosse guy. And the 10 of us met at Carpenter Sports Building. And, it was a small group, but man, just opening the Word of God, having a chance to study it and be able to see them down in the weight room and around down at the facility was such an encouragement. I was the only Christian on the lacrosse team, out of 35 guys on the lacrosse team.
Wow.
I was the token Christian, and everyone somehow knew right away I was a Christian. That guy doesn't drink. He doesn't hang out. He doesn't party. And I was the one guy that they were like, that guy's weird. And I just remember making a stand for Christ, but FCA gave me that ability to invite my teammates, and for 4 years saw that little chapter grow. And I just fell in love with this concept of combining faith and sports. You put them together, you got the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I just remember getting a finance degree. My dad was a stockbroker, financial planner. And I was like, I'm going to follow my dad's footsteps. My two older brothers were engineers, and they weren't smart enough to figure out one day someone's going to have to take over my dad's clients. And, God just started turning in my heart of a decision I made when I was 13 at a camp up in New York that threw a little wood chip in the fire, signifying no longer I who live, but it's Christ within me. And I remember God brought that back to me my senior year and said, I could put my finance degree on the shelf. I can always come back to it, but I want to go back to Northern Virginia where I grew up and give an opportunity to young athletes that I never had. And so we started FCA right there in Northern Virginia. And we had a 13-year overnight success, went from no FCA, no money, no kids at camp, no huddles, no presence on school. We were in 100 schools, 1,000 kids going to camp, and 17 staff, 7 offices, and God just kind of blew it up. And it was a great journey, Mike and Marty. It just was incredible to see what God did. And then back in 2002, the main office called and said, hey, we want you to come to Kansas City. And I thought I was going to Africa. I was like, they don't have lacrosse out there. And, my family's not out there. And, what the heck, tumbleweeds and everything's out there in Kansas. And so came and took a position as a vice president to oversee the programs. And then 10 years ago, they moved me into international. We, FCA at the time, just was focused on US, 4% of the world's population. And again, just put my hand to the plow, and, through God's provision, we went from 1 country to 116 countries in a 10-year period, and just really had a chance to sit almost a front row seat to see God work mightily around the world, to see what God had done for 60 years in the U.S. through FCA. Now is expanded to the nations. And then last summer, God called me out of FCA into a new ministry called Sports Life Leadership. And so, FCA was cutting my teeth, and that's where all the experience that I got in development was my time for 34 years with FCA.
That's amazing. I remember when in 96, I believe it was, I was a coach at Brookstone in Columbus, Georgia. And we didn't have any FCA presence. And I remember I walked onto the campus at Brookstone, and I said, they just hired me, be basketball coach. And I said, we need an FCA. And doggone it, if I walked across the campus and the first person I see is Larry Mize, the Masters winner. And I just never had met him, and I just, hey, are you Larry Mize? And he said, are you the new basketball coach? And we hit it off right there. And that started the FCA and ended up in every school in Columbus. We revitalized the FCA, not only at Brookstone, but everywhere. And they hired Dickie Clark, who you know really well. Dickie used to be the captain of the football team at the University of Georgia. And he came down. He was the head of FCA in Georgia at that time. And he said, you need to go to Kansas City and get trained, man. You don't know anything. You need to get out there. And that's where I met you those years. I walked in there. And what I remember is you introduced me to two things that day. This comedian, his last name is Reagan. What was his first name?
Brian Regan.
Brian Regan. I
Yeah.
walked on the moon. If you haven't seen that, everybody, you need to listen to that. That's hilarious, isn't it? And then you fed us barbecue like I've never, at Kansas City barbecue. Stuff's different than what we have in Georgia, but it's pretty good. And that's where I met you, man. And I appreciate all you've done and all you've done down through the years in a great ministry with so many lives changed. Nothing on the planet like FCA.
Yeah, it's the best. It's God's hand is upon the ministry greatly and continues to be used around the world. It's great to see the vision of the world, impacted for Christ, and that's being realized every day.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think I went to my first FCA meeting in probably 8th or 9th grade in Alabama, where I grew up. My dad was a Baptist minister, so I grew up in a church family. I was a PK, but had never really experienced a group like that in school. And then next thing you know, they start putting flyers out in the school. We're having an FCA meeting, and the next thing you know, we have about 30 or 40 kids at FCA, and we would go around to a different member's house, and that's where we'd have our meetings. I remember we had one in my house in our backyard. We had a little bonfire in our backyard, a little cookout in our backyard, and we had a speaker come, and we had our coach that was the head of the group, and we had really, really good, powerful meetings throughout those years there. And then later as a coach, I became the huddle leader. A couple of different stops I had in my short coaching career in Alabama. I coached 7 years before we moved to Georgia. And then when we did come to Georgia, I was at Columbus State University in the athletic department there. And that's where I got to know Marty, and got to know he and Mike Green and who else? Marty, Lamar Weaver, all those guys with FCA.
And FCA guys, let's see who all was involved in that. Corey Black was in on that. Let's see, Doug Scott, who was the regional representative. Remember Doug? Probably don't you? And Doug was in that. Dickie was right in the middle of that. We had a speaker named Roger Woods. And I remember Roger, we had 586 boys one night in church. Dan, this is a great story, man. Let's just tell stories. This is what it's about God, and we're in this church, and we haven't had one kid all week come down the aisle and make a decision, not one. And I'm thinking these are great messages. I feel God's presence. And for some reason, Roger, who was the chaplain at UT with Pat Summitt, he was Pat Summitt's chaplain. he said, coaches, come down here. And all the coaches, we all came down and we sang the invitation. It could be the worst singing I have ever heard in my whole life. There were guys, they were singing from their heart, but they were not singing from the book. It was awful. The song was awful. But when he said, come down the aisle, there were 586 kids. There was not one person because their coach was beckoning them to come down. That's what FCA is all about. And that's what turned me on about you. And the name of your organization, Dan, Coach Life. I mean, that's amazing because you like me see the influence of coaches, don't you?
Yeah. We often say the two most powerful words are coach says. And, when the coach speaks, it's whatever you want, coach. So we've seen that time and time again, the power and the influence that the coach has to use it correctly. And we see it's used in the wrong way. I remember talking with Don McClain, the founder of FCA. I became friends with him. He was in his retirement. He was in Maryland when I was starting up in Virginia, and I'd get together with Don McClain, and we developed a friendship. And I remember one time he said to me, Dan, when I originally had this idea of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I knew that the influence of a coach could easily drag people down or drag people up, and the influence was one way or another, bad influence or good influence. And as he looked around in the 50s, imagine that, Marty and Mike, in the 50s, late 40s and 50s, he saw the negative impact that athletes and coaches were having on society. And I'm going, wow, that was the 50s and 40s. And he said, man, we got to do something about it. And that's the whole genesis of how FCA got started.
And that's amazing. And that's what called me when I've been researching that, the influence of a coach and how a coach who's a servant leader, who's a Christ follower, who's the living example of Jesus, and that is magic. That especially for young men, but for young women too. Coach says you hit it. When coach says it, for some reason, it resonates in the hearts of these kids. And if we can empower coaches, to let them see just how influential they are for Christ, we've done a great thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you guys know this well, Mike and Marty, but during my time, 10 years with FCA, expanding FCA outside the U.S. borders, I saw firsthand that whether it's language, culture, country, communities, it didn't matter. Sports is the universal language, and coach says gets translated. I remember this is funny. We were once doing an FCA video, and I had this great idea, like, hey, let's get a video. And we had an international leader staff conference, and we had about 100 of our international teammates together, and it was a great conference. And I said, we're getting videos and different testimonies of what God was doing around the world through the ministry of FCA. And I had this crazy idea. I said to our video guy, I said, hey, let's get every person at the end of the video to say in their language, coach, like what the word coach is. And then we could put a cool little video of all these guys saying the word coach, kind of almost like a video collage of all these guys and gals from all over the world saying the word coach. And the first guy comes in and I said, hey, what in your language, what's coach? And he looks at me funny. He says, coach. I go, no, I know. What's in your language? And he goes, coach. I go, so the word is coach? He goes, yeah, coach. Next guy, coach. What's the word? He says, coach. Well, it was like 20 for 20. It was coach. I was like, I think I had the worst idea ever, but I remember walking away that day thinking, oh my goodness, the power of the word coach. It's the same word in all the languages. It translates. You don't need to translate it. People understand coach. I just got back.
Golly. That's
fact
a heck of
that
a
I don't put in my
story right there.
bio. Yeah, what's that?
That's a heck of a story, man. I just can't believe that is unbelievable. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it blew me away. Like I thought had this clever idea that's going to be this great little video, and I was like, wow, that's not going to be a very good video. Just 20 different accents of the word coach. It's not going to really have that impact that I was hoping. But it's interesting. I just got back 2 weeks ago. A little unknown fact in my bio, no one knows it, but I'm the Ukraine national head coach, lacrosse coach for the Ukraine national lacrosse team. 14 years ago, I was working with our FCA guys there, and there's a guy named Vova that had a dream to start lacrosse in the country of Ukraine, and I worked with him. Obviously, my passion is lacrosse, and years of taking equipment, bringing coaches, working with him, fulfilling a vision, developing players. Many of these players 8 years old, barely could hold a stick. And year after year, we talked about it. And then about 6 years ago, we got it as an official sport in the country of Ukraine and recognized by World Lacrosse as the 68th country in the world to be recognized to have lacrosse in their country. And we got official. And then we started thinking 6 years ago, what would it look like for us to have a national lacrosse team play at a national, international competition? Well, obviously 3 years ago, the war happened, broke out, and that put a pause on it. And I kept going over, working with the players during training camps and developing some of these players that were 8 years old, 14 years old. Can you believe that now in their early 20s? And 2 weeks ago, we took the very first Ukraine lacrosse national team to the European championships that happen once every 4 years. Is in Warsaw, Poland. And we actually played against 23 other European teams with 24 young Ukrainians and had a chance to represent the country of Ukraine. And you know what?
Wow.
Those guys, I'm from America. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm their head coach. And guess what? I was Coach Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And it translates. Coach says it works. Still at it, still raising up young people, investing in them, developing the game of lacrosse. But also we had morning chapels with them. We had 2 chaplains from Ukraine, invested in them from FCA Ukraine Lacrosse. Mightily 2 weeks ago, as we had a chance to represent Ukraine at the European Championships.
That's awesome. That's outstanding. But I want to go back. I want to go back to that video, Dan, that you were talking about when you got those coaches to say, "Coach." To me, that would have been powerful. You said you thought that was the worst idea ever when everybody just got up there and said, "Coach." But to me, that's powerful. That in every language, the word "coach" is the same, and that's a powerful thing right there, and that flows right into what we try to do here with this podcast and what Marty's trying to do with servant leadership and what you're trying to do, I believe, in your organization now, and that is to raise up people who are doing it right and who have the right background, the right grounding to lead young people in whatever sport, whatever endeavor it is. To lead them the right way, because you're correct. And unfortunately, it's still that way in our world today. We have pretty much a dividing line. We have the coaches who do it correctly, the coaches who do it right, the coaches who are true leaders, who are servant leaders, who are teaching their kids not just about a sport, but about how to have success at life. And then we have other people who call themselves coaches, and I don't want to be derogatory toward those folks at all, because I believe anybody can change, but they're worried more about the W's and L's. They're worried more about their reputation and their presence and what they look like and how it's benefiting them. And they've lost focus on what they're there for. And I see it all the time. I've played for people like that as an athlete. I have coached with and against people like that in my coaching career. And in my other endeavors with athletics, I've been around coaches from both walks. And the guys who, and, you know, every now and then you'll have a coach from that other camp that is fairly successful. But in my experience over my life, the most successful coaches are the ones who have the players at heart and who are trying to do the right things by those players and who are trying to develop young men and women in the right way, so that they can take something from this sport and go into life with it, with a grounding that they may not have gotten anywhere else without that coach. And I think that's what's huge about that word, coach.
Yeah, it's exactly what you just said, Mike, is it moves from the transactional to the transformational. We've heard that so many times. Is transformational coaches coach the heart beneath the jersey. Transactional coach coaches the scoreboard and the jersey. It's more about the jersey and the performance, not the heart.
Yes, the why. It's what motivates you. You know, the one thing, Dan, we've surveyed tons of athletes, and a lot of them at FCA camps, you know, throughout the South. We got 3,500, a sample of over 3,500. And these kids, what they want from their coach, what motivates them is they want a coach they trust. They want a coach who sees value in them and not just use my skills to build your resume or whatever, you know. So that's it. We've got reams of evidence about that very thing, that they want somebody to trust. And I bet you run into that too, don't you?
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Marty. I think that, you know, originally the word coach comes from stagecoach, you know, the stagecoach that would take a very important person and a covered stagecoach from point A to point B, and a person of value to provide protection and move them from point A to point B. And so that word stagecoach, literally at the essence, is this coach that says, hey, I'm going to provide covering and protection, and we're going on a journey that I'm going to take you to a place that you can't get to on your own. And that's at the root what a coach does, right? Like the coach provides that trust, that protection, that safety. It's covered. They're safe in the care of the coach, which unfortunately we don't have. Often we you know, the coach abuses the players or takes advantage of the players, or they want something out of the players. That's that transactional. And then the idea is that they're not helping that player get from point A to point B, that they're on a destination and they're getting to a place they can't get there on their own effort.
I totally buy into that. That's what drives athletes. If we get young men and young ladies too. I've coached a lot of female athletes too. What they want is someone that they trust to be a partner in life, to help them more than sports. It's not just about sports. It's about their life. They want to be better in everything they do. And like you say, it's that path goal theory, you know. We want to get on a path with them, help them find a path to their life, the why, the where, what they want, and then and help them remove those obstacles to reach that goal. So, gosh, that's good stuff, man. We should have had you on here 2 months ago.
Absolutely.
Man, you're coaching us up. We appreciate it too.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, you know, tell us about your transition now to sports life leadership. What was the genesis of that organization, and what started the move toward that organization? And now that you are in it full time, tell us about your partners and who all you've got with you, and what your focus is.
Thanks. Yeah, you know, it's ministry is ministry, right? I'll often say that ministry is messy, is bottomless, and relentless. Welcome to the world of ministry. It's a very tough road. A lot of people think, oh, you can't get any other jobs, so you went into ministry. I'm like, that's not necessarily the case. You know, it is, you know, messy all the time. I remember George Verwer with Operation Mobilization passed away a few years ago, but great man of God that started OM, working in 120 countries, 5,000 staff, great organization. I remember he was a friend of my father's, and I remember him saying, we believe in missiology, the study of missions, but no one wants to believe in messiology. And messiology is where two or three Christians are gathered, there's always a mess. And we have to, in ministry, step into that messiness and be the hands and feet of Jesus. That's the power of ministry. And so we're all about trying to bring healing and hope and restoration and reconciliation to the world of sports. And we believe, the three of us on this podcast, we believe that the greatest way to do that is through this powerful platform called sports. And we see it every single weekend. Every single weekend, we see it done the right way and we see it done the wrong way. And so for me, the genesis, Mike, has really originated when we started doing international work 10 years ago. And, I've written camp manuals, I've written banquet manuals, fundraising manuals, I've written all kinds of stuff in FCA, and know the X's and O's of how to do it right, how not to do it, and how to do a leadership camp, how to do a sports camp, how to do an outreach, all these things that we are helping equip our staff, the FCA staff, to do it, more excellent, a better way. But, when I went internationally, they didn't want to hear about me talking about X's and O's. Our international leaders were saying, hey, Dan, can you talk about leadership? What does spiritual leadership look like? Our staff need to understand, like, as they lead other people, as they lead the coaches and athletes and the other staff that they have, what does it look like to lead them well? What does it look like to literally be, I would say, a doormat for Jesus for other people, and so that you're serving people. I love the concept of servant leadership. Sometimes we like saying servant leadership because we want to serve so that we can lead. And actually, I say sometimes let's cut off the leadership and let's just talk about servant. Sometimes we're leaders or we're servant leader. How about just a servant? And we don't want to talk about what it means to be a servant because we always want to get to this leadership, like who's following me, who can I tell what to do. But really, Jesus never really talked about leadership. He, that's a kind of Western modern made term to explain how we can have influence, but he never talked about servant leadership. He just talked about being a servant. And so for me, what I realized is our teammates around the world were hungering to know not what the work of the work is, above the waterline, but work of the heart is. Work of the heart is the things of God, the things that make me the man of God, the woman of God, that allows me to minister out of the overflow that God has poured in. And so for us, I started realizing for 10 years, I was going and serving, going, hey, let me teach you on camps. Like, hey, Dan, let's put that on the shelf. Can you really help our staff understand how to minister with the right heart, how to step into that messiness, that messiology, and to bring hope and reconciliation, wholeness. And so I said earlier, FCA does a great job of combining faith and sports. You put them together, you got Fellowship Christian Athletes. Well, this last 10 years, it's been about three things, not just faith and sports, but it's been leadership. So three things. And that's really where the genesis of sports life leadership started, was combining sports, life is faith, and leadership, put them together. That's what you got, is sports life leadership. And so God was calling me to be able to work with sports leaders. Like, let's disciple the disciplers. Let's walk alongside and be the Aaron and hers and lift up the arms of the people that are in the front lines, the key leaders, and provide that spiritual leadership so that the world of sports can be transformed.
That's awesome.
What a great concept. And that is exactly what coaches who are doing it right do. They serve. I was so impressed with John Harbaugh in a video I saw of him, and when he was talking to his team, and he was talking about serving. Big old John Harbaugh, tough guy. But he says coaches are all about serving players, and you got it, man. I think you got a bullseye there. We need to preach that one to everybody.
Absolutely. And I've been, I did a little scouting on your website and looked at some of the things you have. You have books there. You've written and co-written. I was really impressed that you co-wrote a book along with I can't remember the third person, but John Gordon. I read a lot of John Gordon's stuff. Get a daily email, get a lot of different things from him, and you have used a lot of his quotes. I save a lot of quotes. My phone is full of screenshots of quotes from different people, and there's a lot of John Gordon quotes in there. But you've co-written a book with John Gordon, and with your organization, with your theme in mind, your subject matter in mind, going through there. But there's several other books on there. A number of those are devotional books. And for our folks out there watching this, if you're a coach, or if you're an athlete, or if you're in business, if you're a leader of any kind, I believe it would do you very much good to go on to sportslifeleadership.com and look at the array of resources that you have that can help people. But I saw on there one of the books you've written is a devotional for fathers and sons. And I think that's huge. That's important. That's tremendously important in our world today. And but there's so many things there, and there's so many tenets of what you guys are doing and I think it's unique because I think you found a niche that maybe nobody was living in, and you guys are occupying that space now and starting a movement with this. And I think that's tremendous. And I think it can help anybody, but especially it can help coaches and athletes.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, John, it's funny, John, when he wrote Training Camp a number of years ago, when I was on staff with FCA, he donated like 500 copies to be handed out at the football convention that I was working. And, I didn't know who John was. And he sent us all these books and was like, hey, I want you to hand them out at the coaches convention. I'm like, who the heck are you? I don't even know you, like I don't even have a relationship with you. And this is before he was a, New York Times bestseller. And, I just put him in the warehouse, and he called me up afterwards and was all upset. So my first encounter with John, probably 15 years ago, he was mad at me, and he's like, man, I donated thousands of dollars of books. And you didn't even hand them out. And he goes, have you read one? Have you read Training Camp, which is one of my favorite books that he wrote? And I said, no. And he said, well, you got to read it. And I'd love for you to hand it out to coaches. So I read its Training Camp. I loved it. And we had the coaches convention coming up for basketball. And we had, thousands of coaches coming in, and had like 500 at the FCA breakfast. And so I said, John, I'm going to hand out Training Camp at the basketball. I'm sorry. Your book is awesome. It can be used greatly. And man, we handed out every single copy, and he said, well, we became friends then. Then we, he stopped being mad at me, and we became buddies, and found out he was a lacrosse player at Cornell. I was a lacrosse player. Mm-hmm. How could you be mad at a fellow lacrosse player? And so we became buddies, and I invited him to lacrosse camp that we were doing. And he brought his daughter, who was a lacrosse player. She gave her life to Christ, and he saw firsthand the impact of FCA ministering to her family. I invited John to a major donor event. He brought his wife. His wife came to Christ when Anne Graham Lotz spoke. Man, she brought heaven down to earth. And, Catherine accepted Christ. And later on, Cole, his other child, was a tennis player, went to a camp. He accepted Christ. So he was like, I love FCA. Thank you, Dan. We repaired the relationship. And then, I was teaching on this concept of one word that'll change your life, creating a one-word vision statement for the year, scrap resolutions, but just crystallize the simplicity, the power, laser-like focus that you can have just through a one-word vision for the year. And he loved it. He was talking about it all the time. I said, John, I'd like for you to write this book with Jimmy and I. Jimmy was on staff with FCA, and he was like, no, I don't want to do it. I'll write the forward. And I talked him into it. And finally, his publisher agreed. And next thing you know, we've sold 250,000 copies of One Word That Changed Your Life. And it's being spread around the world. And just seeing how God used, broken play to see now. He's one of my best friends. He's on the Sports Life Leadership Board, totally committed to what we're doing. And we're working very closely together to bring Christ to the world of sports.
That is amazing. It's amazing too, how many reconcile relationships I've had in sports, where you meet a guy and you don't like him, and then he ends up being one of your best friends. And that was the way it was with you and John. The guy I was talking about, Roger Wood, who led the invitation that night in those boys' game. The first time I met Roger, we were at basketball camp in Florida State, and he was coaching for a team, and our bosses were saying, don't lose the basketballs at camp. When you go off with 12, come home with 12. Well, we were counting balls, and at the end of the game we played, and he had a ball and I had a ball, and we both thought it was our ball, and we got in a big argument over, no, that's my ball. No, that's my ball. And so that night, after it was all over, we said, hey, we need to be friends, man. And we went out and ate wings down in Tallahassee and prayed together, and we've been best friends ever since. And we almost came to blows over a doggone basketball. And sometimes our egos get in the way, but when I get Marty out of the way, God uses me. But Marty is my big obstacle. That's the hurdle we all got to jump ourselves.
Great story.
I think that's it for all of us. We got to get ourselves out of the way, and I think that's a lot of the lesson of Jesus in being a servant is you've got to lower yourself and you've got to get your ego out of the way because a servant is willing to do whatever it takes, and they are there to help. They are there to serve, and they don't worry about ego. They don't worry about who gets the credit. And I think that's the thing that we have to, that we're all three of us here. I think we see the importance of that in the world, especially of sports, because in this day and time with social media and with everything going on about how you can build your own brand and, build yourself up and all of this going on, it's really important to help ground young people in the fact that, that's not really what you're here for. You're here to serve. You're here to learn to be a servant. The quicker you learn that, the more you're going to probably start seeing success in your life and really see things in a different light. And it doesn't mean you're not going to experience success because and not going to experience some of the fame and some of the recognition, but it just means you have a different attitude about it. And I think that's huge in our world today.
Amen. It's great points you make there, Marty and Mike, because as we say in leadership development is the biggest problem in leadership is the person you see in the mirror. Self-leadership. We struggle with doing the very things we're asking other people to do. And that ego gets in the way. And we've often heard EGO means edging God out. And what a great little way to remember that every time my ego flares up, I'm crowding God out and edging him out and putting myself up on the platform.
Yep. That's a great acronym. That's a great acronym for ego. I'll have to remember that for sure.
Every time you hear it now, you'll be convicted. It's
I'll think about that. Yeah.
God goes to the sideline, and I'm putting myself front and center.
Hey, I just had a thought here, Dan. As you're going around, as you're working in this ministry and in your work with FCA, what do you see? And this may come out of left field a little bit, but what do you see as the greatest obstacles that coaches have or that coaches face in becoming that true servant as a coach? What do you think their biggest obstacle is that most have to overcome?
Yeah, there's a lot of obstacles, and I think a lot of times it depends on their experience as an athlete, the coaches they had or didn't have, right? Mm-hmm. We coach the way we coach, we parent the way we parent is a lot of times the way we were parented. So we had bad parents. I'm not going to parent like that. So because you had bad parents, you choose not to do that. Or I had bad parents. I don't want to do that, but you fall into that rut of parenting just like them. Same thing with coaching. It's the exact same thing. You know, you start talking to coaches and you talk about the obstacles and the things that they're facing to really coach the heart beneath the jersey comes down to a lot of times just their own experience. Like I went back, I don't know if you've done this, but I've counted up all the coaches I've had through Little League, through, you know, high school, through college, through played pro lacrosse for 4 years. I had about 30 coaches. I can think of one transformational coach, one out of 30.
Oh, wow.
Coach Sleepy Thompson. He was my high school football coach who he used to always say, accentuate the positive. That was his phrase, accentuate the positive. And I didn't even know what the word accentuate was. I had to go look it up. And, you know, that's what a lacrosse player is like. Oh, that means stress, to emphasize the positive. And he was that kind of coach because he literally coached the heart. Now he's very successful. He was an amazing football coach, but he cared more about the boys than he did the scoreboard. And Sleepy was a great example, 1 out of 30, that gave me an example of what it meant to accentuate the positive, to create that culture, to not worry about the scoreboard. I mean, I would tell players all the time, you know, is it possible to win on the field, to actually win on the scoreboard, but to lose on the field? Meaning you didn't play the right way. Is it possible to, as a coach, to walk away with the victory, but you failed as a coach? Or is the opposite true, that you lost on the scoreboard, but you won as a coach or won as an athlete? So what I was always stressing as a coach, like I said to the boys, the Ukraine boys, I mean, they had to take a 24-hour bus from Ukraine through the night across the border, 6 hours at the border, 6 hours they had to cross the border into Poland, 10 hours back in from Poland, back into Ukraine. They sat at the border just so they could play the game that they love. And I said to the boys when we were in Poland, I said, guys, this is before we started. We didn't have 1 over 7 games. We haven't even played a game yet. I said, you have already won. You have won what you've overcome, what you've accomplished. There's a 14-year miracle that you're experiencing. You're the very first player to play on the very first national team. You have already won. The scoreboard's not going to dictate whether you win or not. Well, most coaches are going to think, man, I'm in the European Championship. We got to show up. We got to beat Poland. We got to beat Germany. We got to beat Czech. We got to beat Denmark, all the teams, Spain, all the teams that we played. And the pressure that we face and we put on ourselves, the indirect and direct pressure that we put on ourselves as coaches and athletes to perform. And I think it's so ingrained in us of the performance base to be a champion. And what I say often, guys, is this, is instead of getting the championship, we are building champions. It's not about walking away with the trophy and saying we are the champions. It's, are there champions? Are we building champions every single day? And so for me, what I looked at was we had 7 games. And, you know, we're a developing team. A lot of these other countries have been playing for 30, 40 years in developed lacrosse, and they had a lot of players, a lot of development. And some of the 8-year-old players that I knew were playing on the team now 14 years later. I mean, we had 3 16-year-olds on our national team playing against grown men. It was crazy. Wow. One of our best players was 16 years old. And, you know, you can get overwhelmed by that. But my thing is not whether we went 7-0 or 0-7, is whether we went 23-0. 23-0 because we had 23 young men on the team. And my prayer was at the end of the European Championship was that we went 23-0. It's about the players and the heart behind the jersey, not the scoreboard. And the problem is we look at the 7-0. Hey, we walked away with the European Championship, but we might have gone 0-23. We didn't build young men. We didn't invest. We didn't show servant leadership. We didn't develop them as young men of God to become men to make contribution beyond themselves. And so that's the power of coaching. But that's, I think, Mike, the strain and the pressure and the obstacles that most coaches and athletes face today in the world of sports.
What a great answer to the essential question, Mike. Good question,
Mhm.
great answer. It's more than winning.
Absolutely.
When I wrote my first book, that's why I chose the title, More Than Winning. If that's all we seek, we are coming up so short and short selling many guys on our team as well. I could listen to you all night, Dan Britton.
Yeah.
Tell
I
that
could
to
too.
my wife. Tell that to my wife, Marty.
We need you back one time. We need to get you back. Give us a month or two and come back on here maybe and talk to us again. Your words really resonate with our audience, I guarantee you. I'm getting on my phone. I'm getting this blown up with love sign, the love thing. So the love icon. So
Yeah, I think we definitely need to have you back on, Dan, because I'd like to hear about the progress of sports life leadership as you go on and what you're accomplishing. And but tell our listeners and our viewers how to find sports life leadership and what all you guys do for different coaches, different organizations, different entities. What you do, the services you offer.
Yeah, you can go to our website, sportslifeleadership.com, that you already mentioned, Mike. We got a lot of resources there. We got reading plans with YouVersion. We have almost 1 million completions of YouVersion reading plans, Bible studies that people have downloaded. Phenomenal impact that we've seen. We got great resources, books like you mentioned, Called to Greatness, a father-son devotional. We just re-released a sports devotional called True. It's about spiritual grit, helping coaches, athletes, and parents in regards to everything that we just talked about. It was funny. I had Billy Napier, the head coach at University of Florida, just text me 2 weeks ago. He's like, Dan, we're getting ready to start the season. I need 125 copies of True Competitor. We want every single coach and athlete in our program to go through and take 52 devotions on what it means to be a true competitor. But, again, we have the resources, but what we are is we're sports and leadership. You put them together with faith at the core. And so we're developing this leadership track, training spiritual leadership, investing in sports leaders around the world. And then we're developing sports specific. And so think about it. I took a huge step of faith of an organization that I'd served. I was overseeing 3,500 staff in 116 countries, took that step, transitioned into sports life leadership, and it was just me. And I thought, Lord, that was August 1st, almost 1 year ago today, roughly today, and coming up here. And I just said, I'm going to take this step of faith. And if I can just make it a year from now and I can just raise enough money, cast vision, share what God's put in my heart, I'll be the happiest person in the world just to make this transition out of a large organization to something brand new. And we're at 17 staff working in countries around the world. I just got back from India and Pakistan and Greece, and we just did a jiu-jitsu camp in Greece, huge impact. I was just in Poland, and God is breathing on this ministry in a vibrant way to develop sports and leaders to transform the world for Christ.
That is amazing. God bless you, man.
Absolutely.
So you can go to our website. A lot of great resources. We have books on Amazon. You can find us on YouVersion. We got 10 reading plans that people can plug into and study God's word or do it with other people. And we just want to equip biblical, gospel-centered resources so that sports leaders can make an impact.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
That is awesome.
We're so fortunate to have you on here tonight. And the time, I didn't know we basically almost hit your anniversary. That's a God thing right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What an honor to have you here 1 year in and to get you to have you be able to tell the story. And, we hope that our listeners will respond to that. Go order some books, do those reading plans on YouVersion. YouVersion is such a tremendous ministry. It's been outstanding since it came on the market and on all the smartphones. I've got it on mine. I use it quite a lot, but the reading plans are just tremendous. And to know that you have them on there is outstanding. But, Dan, we always leave people with this. If you had one piece of advice for a new coach or a young coach who's gaining experience, if you had one piece of advice to give them as they go on their career, what would it be?
Yeah, great question. I could answer that a million different ways.
Yeah.
I would say it gets back to the Word of God. It just simply, I've seen it over and over again. The transformational power of the Word of God for rebuking, correcting, and teaching, as it says in Timothy, is handling the Word of God correctly, as it mentions in 2 Timothy. Is that I've seen so many great coaches who just operate in their own strength. They operate in their own giftedness. And obviously if you get a coaching position, you got some skills, you got some game, you got some knowledge, you got some stuff that the people want. And so they hire you for your abilities to coach the game, the X's and O's. And so often I see Marty and Mike that our success that we have draws us away from the Lord, spending time in the presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I could just offer time and time again when I'm in front of coaches and athletes is you got to get your face in the book. You got to get your face in the book. If you don't get your face in the book daily, you're dead meat. You're dead meat. And I've seen so often very successful coaches that just, even great pastors, right, who all they do is provide teaching to give to others, but they never nourish their own soul. Coaches that are always so enamored to come up with the next play or the next great win, but they're not enamored to go deeper and find the new spiritual truth or principle or the things of God, to grow in the intimacy with the Lord. My father, who passed away 14 years ago from leukemia, and my father was a great man of God. He was very intense. I'm like small intensity compared to him. People go, Dan, you're the most intense person I've ever met. I'm like, you've never met my dad. My dad's Captain Intensity. But you talk about the 3 D's of devotion: drudgery, discipline, and delight. Drudgery, discipline, and delight. I'll never forget it when he told me that. He said, Dan, when it first starts out and you commit to spending time in devotions every day in God's word, it's drudgery. It's like eating bark. It's like tough, but you just do it every day. You just got to show up and say, God, I'm reading your word. I want transformation. I want to feel your intimacy. And it feels like drudgery. And he goes, you do it long enough that devotion turns from drudgery into discipline. It goes from, I have to do it to I get to do it. I get to do it. And that's the discipline. It's just the way you are. It's incorporated into your rhythm and your routine. And then my dad would get a big smile on his face. He said, Danny, because he called me Danny back in the day, says, Danny, that drudgery and discipline will turn into delight. And it's not because you have to do it or you get to do it, is you want to do it. You long to be in God's presence. You wake up every day imagining that you get to meet with the God of the universe, who longs to be with you more than you even long to be with him. Imagine that. The God of the universe longs and desires to be in communion with you more than we even want to be with him. And so that's when it's delight. And I just know the 3 D's of discipline, the 3 D's of devotion are so key. And every day it's not delight. Some days it's discipline. Some days it's drudgery. But man, I know when God shows up, his presence comes and there's delight. That's what coaches need. That's what athletes need, is to spend time lingering longer in the presence of the Lord.
Man.
The church broke out here on Step Up the podcast. That's awesome. That is awesome. But Dan, again, thank you for joining us, and we absolutely want to have you back a little bit later on as we keep this going and we build this podcast ministry that we have, and we want to hear more good things about sports life leadership and have you tell some more stories. And I love that, the drudgery, discipline, delight. That's something I've got to remember from here on out, and I hope everybody will that's watching tonight. But as we always say, Marty, it's been another great podcast episode with Dan, and as we always say, our job here is to try to equip people to be willing and able to step up and make a difference. And we hope that this week's podcast with Dan Britton and what he's shared with us tonight, we hope that is equipping somebody and will move forward to give them the courage and the wherewithal to step up and make a difference, because that's what we're here for. That's what this is all about. Dan, thank you again for being with us. Marty, have a great week coming up, and we'll do this again with another great guest. But I mean, it's going to have to go a long way to top Mr. Dan here. This has been a great episode.
Coach, in every language, the same word. That's the thing I'm going to remember. I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Yeah,
and that is just the neatest story.
Yeah, I should have dug it up, Mike. We should repeat that. We should actually do that. So we should. I like that. Hey, it's coach in every language is the same. It'd be a great video. Yeah. I thought it was a failure, but you're probably right. It would have been powerful either way.
Yeah, but it worked out good.
It is powerful. It is powerful. Well, you guys have a great week. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah. Hey, sorry about the on Sunday. I just, man, my mom's, my dad passed away 14 years ago of leukemia, and my mom just got diagnosed 2 weeks ago, and it just, she's back in Virginia. And, tonight we're on an hour call with my brothers and her and working through things, but, her window is pretty short of 4 to 6 months. So I apologize, but thank you for adjusting.
That's no problem.
You did what you should have done. We're just so happy. I want to book you too. I teach what I teach at Shorter is inspiring coaches and athletic directors. I get to sit every day with 21 guys and girls who want to be coaches, and that's what I do for a living. Can you think of a better thing to do in the world? So I want to get you on one time and bring you in class and let you zoom in and just talk about these things you talked about. And because they need to hear that, and they need to hear it every day.
I love it. I love it. Zoom me in, Marty.
I'll do it. And I got your phone number. I'll be in touch with you. And I still listen to Brian Regan.
I've seen him in concert probably 6 times. It's our family favorite. We quote lines from him all the time.
Oh, he's so funny. And his demeanor, just the way he talks, he's just hilarious. Well, man, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. Thanks, Mike. Yeah,
hey, we're so glad you're able to join us. And I tell you, Dan, I don't know if this would be any help to you. You've already been through leukemia with your father. But if you can get on Facebook, I don't know if you have a Facebook page, but there's a guy in Birmingham, Alabama. His name is Rick Carley, Karle. And Rick he's a former sportscaster in Birmingham, and then he was a morning TV host for a little while, and now he has kind of a social media ministry. But he has been following the story of an 11-year-old kid from Alabama who had leukemia, and he was in dire shape, and they took him to Italy. His parents took him to Italy for some kind of radical new treatment, and it was a last-ditch effort to try and get a handle on his leukemia. And as of yesterday morning, that treatment has worked, and he is in remission now, and it's just been what Rick has done is taken his mom's messages and republished them on his Facebook page to let people. Rick's got a ton of followers around the state of Alabama for sure, but really I think it's all around the country now that Rick's picked up followers. And it's just an amazing story of their, they are Christian people. They give all the glory to God. And the mom talks about how good God is in every one of her messages. And it's just been an amazing story to follow, but something that might be a little sunshine in the face of all of this that's going on with you and your family. But it is amazing to be able to read that and see what's happened.
Excellent. How do you spell the last name again?
Karle. And let me see.
Yeah.
While we're
Good.
still on here, let me look on my page and see if he's got a post today. I'll actually search him out real quick.
Dan, you know, my wife has battled lymphoma since 2001, and they told her in 2001 she wouldn't have, they couldn't cure it, you know, and she just had a few years to live. We went to MD Anderson in Houston, and she had radiation there, and she's also had chemo or EPOC, and she's doing great, you know. I mean, that was 2001, so 24 years ago, and she was supposed to die in just a short time. So God is never going to let you go until He's through with, you know, as long as you're immortal when you're in God's will, regardless. So I'll be praying for your mom.
Her name is Dorothy.
Absolutely.
Dorothy. You can remember Dorothy Britton. So
yeah, and Dan, Rick has his own page. He has his own personal Rick Carley page, but the one where he does most of his postings is called Rick Carley Good News. And he shares a lot of stories he shares about athletes. He shares about people who've overcome, you know, and are going through the fire of an illness or an injury or anything like that. But he also shares really great stories just about people in general that have a good story to tell. It's really a great follow to get that. But I've been following that story of that young man and his family all the way across the ocean away from home in Alabama. And it's just been a tremendous read every day. I look forward to reading the updates on it.
It's great.
So
I will check it out for sure tonight.
We didn't mean to keep you all night, brother, but
No, it's good. It's good. I could talk to you guys all night.
we couldn't let you go. Man, we needed to hear this. This is perfect. So thank you, man.
Yeah, there's actually a post that he made earlier today or very early this morning. The young man's name is Branson Blevins, and he's from Robertsdale, Alabama, which is down by the coast. But he's there's another good post on there today about his situation. So, but hey, we will absolutely be praying for your mom and for your family, and we just, again, we so appreciate you. It's so good to get to know you a little bit on here. Wish I could spend some more time with you. Maybe we'll get that chance somewhere down the line to do that.
Yeah, this is the do-over. I can see one.
Do-over.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man.
Thanks, my friends. Good chatting.
Thanks. You guys have a great remainder of your week, okay? Love you guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Blessings.
See ya.